Hi, I'm Kathy Hayes, friend and supporter of CANTV. CANTV has been dedicated to educating the community and community action. March 17th is the primary general election. Please remember to get up and get out the vote. Vote your voice. March 17th.
Senator Iris Martinez, and I am running for Clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County. I have spent my career fighting for working families, breaking barriers for women and people of color. As Clerk of the Circuit Court, I will adhere to the highest ethical standards. I will respect union contracts and patronage abuses and make the clerk's office one of the most respected offices in the country. I will fully digitize the operations of the clerk's office and adopt new technologies that will lower costs and save taxpayers money. I pledge to lead the clerk's office into the 21st century, and I'm ready to take on the establishment as an independent woman and make the tough decisions necessary to reform the clerk's office. Remember to vote for me, Iris Martinez, for Clerk of the Circuit Court on March 17. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Stephen Patterson.
I'm Kathy Hayes, friend and supporter of CANTV.
Welcome to Election 2020. This is Stephen Patterson presents Election 2020. Today is a live show, meaning that we'll actually be able to take calls in from everyone in Chicago. But hopefully we'll just be so caught up in all of the information that's going on that you'll be riveted and grab your phones, call us, and we'll have to actually do a second show. But at the beginning of our show today, for our first half hour of our live, we'll have Senator Iris Martinez that's running for Clerk of the Circuit Court. We'll have her to tell us a little bit about herself, and then we'll get into different questions. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
All right. Well, of course, you're a senator, so we'll definitely ask about your history of that. But today, we're actually here talking about your run for the Clerk of the Circuit Court. Could you tell us a little bit, what are the duties of that office?
Well, when you enter the judicial system, the first point of entry is the Clerk of the Circuit Court's office. So when you go there, you're basically looking for services when it comes to the judicial system. Let it be order for protection, let it be child support, let it be adoptions. There's a lot of documents that office has. And this is, you talk about documents that have been filed and that are there for you to be able to access. Of course, as you know, there's been a real problem in that office as far as accessing to files because there's a lot of missing files. It's an office that for the first time, it's open. It's an open seat now. And I think it's exciting because we have, there's other candidates and myself that have new ideas, way to transform that office into something that is the taxpayers can be proud of. And right now that office is just been, stuck in in a very antiquated state. The technology is antiquated, and the technology that has been brought forward has not been working. So there's a lot of issues within that office that I think I really feel that I have the potential and the energy to come in and change and reform that office to an office today that we can say in the future could be a state-of-the-art county clerk's office. It's an office that's very important, where documents can mean, someone sitting in jail, or waiting on that paperwork, and also working with the other entities that feed into the clerk's office, like the public defender's office, the state's attorney's office, the sheriff's office, the chief justice office. These are offices that depend on the clerk's office for all the paperwork that's necessary for any particular case. And there's just so much that needs to be done there. And I feel like there's just going to be a lot of work. But I think that when you look at everyone that's involved, you can actually grab from all these different entities and sit down and have a conversation and see how can we close that gap that right now exists in that office.
Okay. Well, based upon that, I hope that you're pretty familiar with, if you haven't actually been down in the court system, you know someone that has. And if you've ever been down there, because I've been down there on several occasions for different things. And yes, the system is definitely outdated as far as I still remember going in and grabbing paperwork that you would assume would be on computers, switch from office to office, or that you can pull from any office at any time, depending on your level
That's right.
of clearance to get to certain records. But that's not the case there. It's really far back in history, meaning like TV type of time, like before we had this type of time. So today we want you to actually call in and ask your questions about that office and ask about her candidacy. And in order for you to do that, you need to actually call into the station. The station's number for today's live show is 312-738-1845. That's 312-738-1845. Okay, let's talk about, now that we know a little bit about the office itself, tell me what's your qualifications to even come and be a candidate for this office?
Well, first of all, I've been an 18-year lawmaker, and I've worked with the county on many issues in Springfield, legislation. We talk about funding. We talk about just different programs within the clerk's office that the state is involved. When we talk about what the function of that office is, as a legislator and someone in the community that has had dozens and dozens of people come to my office and say, Senator, that office is a mess. Senator, I went there and my paperwork has been lost 3 different times, a woman looking for child support, a paperwork that's missing on an order for a protection that can mean the life of that person. So you can see there's a lot of issues, but there's a disconnect between these offices, and the clerk's office. And I think that's where we have to sit down and have a real serious talk on how do we connect these dots. Mm-hmm. The clerk's office, the antiquated system that is in place right now, when you talk about that, they're still using carbon paper.
Right.
We are way back. So if anybody's looking for carbon paper, you can get some at the clerk's office. But more important, when you talk about that, then you know that we definitely have a problem with things that are not being digitized. And I blame the administration, current administration that's been there, that has not been able to reinvest in the workforce and training. When you hear that courtrooms are empty, that are empty because of a lack of a clerk, that tells you something. So where are we at with the training that has happened there? There has just been a real disconnect with the frontline workers. We're talking about the unionized workers that are there. We're talking about the shackman workers that are there. And I'm talking about middle management. Middle management needs to be protected in the sense because they take their orders from the top. The clerk has been absent for quite a while there. So I have to blame the current administration that's been there that has continued the mismanagement, because that's what's been there, the mismanagement of that office, the corruption that has existed in that office on what you hear has transpired, where people have gone to jail, and the current clerk still continues to be under this cloud. I'm not going to talk about Dorothy Brown, because first and foremost, I want to thank her for her service. But more important right now is what's going currently on in that office, where we're not getting the answers, we're not getting what we need to make that office function correctly. The first thing I would do is call my first day there, I will fire the administration within Dorothy's circle, because they have also mismanaged that office, and I have to blame them. They want to reapply for their job, be more than happy, but you got to give me a good excuse why I should rehire you based on what's happened in that office and the same people that have been there year after year. Patronage, probably, most likely, we can say that. But my thoughts are that I have to sit with middle management, and I've heard from so many employees that work there about their lack of training, to get you up to speed in the current systems that are being brought in there. The technology that was brought in has been a complete disarray. Every time there's been a rollout, has been one problem after the other. How is it that we're still, in today's world of technology that we exist in, how is it possible that we cannot get that right? So my job is to go in there, clean house, and bring in people from the community, people that are experts in these subjects, in these areas. Bring them in and sit with me. Tell me what is wrong, because everybody can criticize what's wrong. I need people to help me figure that out. All together we can work, especially the folks that are affected, like the attorneys, like the sheriff's office, like the city attorney's office, where there has been a real standoffish kind of attitude because it's the clerk's office. No, we have to all work together for the sake of the people that we're serving. We cannot continue to hear these stories about the lack of leadership, the lack of professionalism, the lack of training. So we have to take that into account. First day, look at an audit, call for an audit of everything in the clerk's office so we can see where the deficiencies are at, so we can see where the problems are at and start shifting those dollars, because it's not about more money, it's how this money has been spent, is being spent in the clerk's office, and where exactly are the resources being put at. I don't see it in the workforce development or training. That's important. That's got to be very important first.
So you actually think that budget is not the problem? It's not the budget, it's just how the budget is actually being used.
You know, we always talk about the budget and how we lack funds. But right now in that office, until we do an audit and see how that money's being spent, how that money's being distributed, where is this money going into? You know, when you look at the bloated administration, overhead, right there in that office, that's money that I feel should be going into the workforce. So, it's going and looking at everything and saying, okay, how do we fix this and how do we start shifting these dollars where the deficiencies are at that the audit actually is calling for? That's the only way we're going to find in what conditions and disarray that office is as far as where these dollars are being spent or not being spent. And that's the first thing we have to do in order to get this, at least at the process of correcting these issues. Technology, right now we have the Tyler system that's in there, that's the computerized digital folks that are in there. Why have they've spent millions of dollars in that, with that vendor, and somehow, we're just not getting the results. Why? Why are we not getting the results?
How long has that system been in place, though? Because you have to have a transitional period of time, especially when
It's been quite a while. They've had like 2 or 3 rollouts since they've been there. And I got to say, they've been in there at least over, 5, 6, 7 years. Again, we can't get answers from that office. That's why that's why I'm going to introduce, legislation to start getting some of that information out there. When we took the Freedom of Information Act, we have to. I know there's certain parts of the clerk's office that you cannot get the freedom of information because there's a lot of privacy. But what about the other areas that we can finally get some real data, some real numbers? That's the only way we're going to be able to find out what we can do to address the issue. And there's a lot of things that I feel that we're going to be able to do when we get the right people in the room and start having real serious conversations about how do we repair, how do we restructure, how do we retrain, and start looking at all these courtrooms and what the issues are with the lack of clerks. Why? Why do we have lack of clerks? We know that the workforce has dropped by about 900 employees. We're down to from 2,000 that they were to almost 1,400.
Okay.
And so when you hear the issue about data not being inputted, we have a warehouse right now that was the $24 million were spent to build this warehouse, and it's just files and files and files of paperwork.
Right.
Again, people talk about that's been ignored, then I want to get in there and see how we can start digitizing, how we can go in and modernize all that's been going on in that warehouse so we can start addressing the issue about paperwork and how we need to make sure that that's digitized. That means that we're going to have to invest in the workforce. We have to find technology, individuals out there that are really coming to work and give us ideas on how we can start doing this in a way that makes sense. I think the training that needs to be done there, we have to bring in, through HR, new training abilities for the workforce. We got to hire, at one point, people back. When we talk about 900 employees that have been let go in the process or moved around to other areas, how do we expect in the clerk's office to be running and getting those files put into the system if we don't have real live people doing that? I mean, we can do so much with technology, but we need live people to put that information into the system. So you can see there is just so many areas there that need to be addressed. And the only way of getting that, addressed is by actually getting in there, winning this election, and cleaning up house and really starting to work with middle management, with the employees that are there, because they are the ones that are affected by how that office is running, and they're getting the bad rep, and it's not fair to these workers that are getting the, saying that that there's a lack of leadership, there's a lack of, professionalism, there's a lack. No, you know what? When you don't invest in the workforce, you're going to find people out there that are going to be critical. And I don't want the office of the clerk to be criticized at this point any longer. What's happened in the past is the past. We have to look towards the future. And the future is modernization of the system that's in there. Bring in all these vendors that are in there. Find out who these vendors are and what really are they contributing to the clerk's office. When you talk about, like, say, corruption and mismanagement and jobs being sold, as been said in the past, let's move forward. Let's move forward. We have to correct all that and bring that office, to the 21st century as far as technology is concerned, because that's the only way we're going to be able to really hit the ground running when we get there. I want to look at other counties, California, New York, look at those county clerk's office and see how they're functioning. And you hear great things about them. I want to go there and look at what they're doing so we can make sure we can apply it here if it applies to us in here in Illinois, in the Cook County.
Yeah, I was wondering, I'm assuming that the Cook County would have actually looked for best practices in other counties across the country to see what they could actually do. I know we have a huge system, so I mean that when you're trying to deal with an elephant, you just can't stick a fork in it.
Right. And that's been the problem. The office has been dysfunctional for years now, years and years. So that means that there has not been any real work done in looking the best practices in other areas, in other cities, in other states, especially county, where the counties are big, like California, like Texas.
Right.
There's a lot of counties that are out there that have a big population. How are they doing? What is their court system? You have to look and see what are the best practices that is working for them and apply them here. Unfortunately, our office has not, the clerk office has not been functioning the way it should. And again, it's a brand new day. Come March 17, come March 18, it's a brand new day with a new, clerk that will be coming in. Of course, that doesn't take office until the end of the year. But it's an opportunity to finally hear the plans that at least I have as a candidate about how I want to look at this office. And really, it's not about me, it's about the people that it serves. It's about the people that I need input from to help reshape and restructure that office that has just lacked that. We can do it. There's no doubt Illinois has been at the forefront of so many different model legislation and initiatives that other states are looking at. Why not the clerk's office? We have to make sure that in an office where we have too many black and brown people in jail, sitting and waiting, it's unacceptable to me to hear that it's because of the lack of the paperwork. That is ridiculous. People need to be working. People need to be out there taking care of their families, not sitting in a jail cell because the lack of paperwork or missing paperwork, which is what you hear constantly. That has to end, and we have to start addressing this issue.
Okay. Now, I know that there's 4 candidates actually running for this office. You happen to be the only female.
I'm the only woman. I'm the only woman of color, basically there,
right, exactly.
but a woman. And I think we are about cleaning up house. So yeah, I'm excited about that. Again, having being a woman on the campaign trail, hearing people, talking to people, it's been very warming. People have come to me with ideas, and I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes because there's a lot of people out there that really look at their office and how they can help reshape it. Those are the people that I want to stay in contact with because of the fact that they've either accessed that office, at one point in their life and have not liked what they've experienced there. We hear it constantly. I hear it from my constituents in my Senate district about what's been going on at the clerk's office. And to me, we just cannot continue to say, oh, it's a mess, it's a mess, it's a mess. I hear that over, oh my goodness, what are you doing? Why are you going there? Because we have to take responsibility.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
responsibility means that all those individuals that have been part of the administration responsible for this office have lacked their services. And it's just been, when you hear some of the stories from the inside, you're like, wow, it definitely needs a whole new structure to bring in real people that really want to see this office, especially the entities that are out there, like the clerk's office, like the justice office, chief justice office, like the sheriff's office, like the state attorney. These are the people that access that office and need. That to me is where we start working together as one county government.
Okay. We have a caller on the line. Do you have a question for our Senator Iris Martinez?
Yes, I do. Senator, congratulations on your run. Quick question. I go downtown and I've been there to pay separate fees and fines, so forth and so on. I want to know, how can we make it easier for someone like myself to pay for these fines from my home so I don't have to go downtown and pay parking?
Okay.
Definitely, that is one of my plans, is
Thank
to
you,
make
caller.
sure Thank you very much for calling in. That is one of my plans, is make sure that we can have a pay online system. We don't have that right now. We have it with some of the court costs, but not all of it. We have to really digitize that area so people can, from their home, don't have to take time off work, don't have to visit the courtroom just to pay their court costs. There has to be a better process. And to me, one of the things, again, the technology. We're talking about technology. We got to bring in, 21st, to state-of-the-art technology, and that's where an app or online payments is going to be very important. Work with the Department of Revenue and figure that out and see how we can make sure that people don't have to take time off work, that they can do it online. And that's going to be one of my priorities, is making sure that we develop an online payment process, possibly for everything that has to be paid, so people do not have to take time off work or have to make arrangements to pay that, go personally to pay it. We have to, in today's world where technology is everything done from an app, right from your phone, there should be no reason that the clerk's office should not have those abilities and have that accessibility to folks that are trying to access the office and trying to pay things ahead of time before, before they have to have court date.
Okay, now you can pay like parking tickets and fines. It's just you can't pay for anything that has to do before.
Right, but there's court costs that can be paid online. There's certain things that can be paid online through the clerk's office. And right now, we're not doing it correctly. And there
Okay.
again, and let's expand that. How much more can we do to make it so much easier for folks to access that office without having to leave their home, without having to leave their community? That's the important thing here. How can we help those individuals get the access they need without having to put any expenses on them? That's what I'm going to be working on with the technology.
Okay, now, I guess because the office, some people don't know a lot about what the office do, and you have, like we just mentioned, there's 3 other candidates that's also running for the office. Have you had a chance as of yet to actually be in a room with them and discuss y'all's differences and where you excel and where you might be the best representative out of the other people that's running? Have you had that opportunity yet?
Yes, we've had a couple of forums already. They've been pretty interesting.
Pretty live, huh?
Pretty live. They're very interesting. But the important part of that is that it's given us a chance, at least for people to see who the other candidates are. I'm an 18-year veteran. They are all lawyers. I'm the non-lawyer. But I do have a background in public administration, and that's what that office needs. That office needs an administrator that really is going to work with all of them. And again, and they bring this out a lot to me. Well, she's the only non-lawyer, and I said, well, then I might not be a non-lawyer, but I'm a lawmaker, and that makes me just as qualified. Again, it's about the ideas, the way to transform that office and reform that office. That's
Right.
so, and I, as someone that has heard over and over from constituents, heard from the lawyers, have heard from sheriffs about the deficiencies, the mismanagement in that office. I've been going around the county talking to folks everywhere about this, and I see that is going to be the solution, is taking everyone's ideas that are out and how to reform that office and start applying it. Having folks that really come into the circle that we need to transform that office, to reinvest in the workforce. That is why I am a better candidate than the other 3. And and all due respect to all 3, yes, they are all attorneys, but as the non-attorney and as the woman who has the public administration background and policy, I feel that that's what that office needs right now, is an administrator that can completely tackle every aspect, starting with an audit, to make sure that we know where we're going and stop in a year from now saying, we've done this, this, and this already to transform that office. But for me, the most important is the investment and the reinvestment that we have to do with our workforce, our middle management folks that are there, that are doing a good job, but probably could doing a better job if they had the right leader helping them achieve that. And moving people from down to the top because they've been there, they have the experience, as opposed to the top,
Right.
the top of the tier where all the dollars, are being spent on salaries there, when
Right.
that should be that should be going to middle management and folks that have been there, that know the system, and
the
all they're waiting is
resources,
just for an opportunity to show their leadership, and that's what I'm about.
And actually, me personally, I think that actually an administrator is better than an attorney in this particular office because it's the clerk.
It's the clerk.
It's
It's
the
the one
clerk.
that
It's the
keeps the
person-
files of everything, everybody.
Not the one that make any legal decision.
That's right.
At all. You have in your office those people that actually support you in that.
That's
but
right.
your job is to actually make sure that this document is where it needs to be.
That's right.
When it needs to be, and that everybody has access to it.
And the full report, because not bits and pieces that continues to go on when these individuals are ready to go to court. The paperwork is not complete, and they have to sit there and wait to find where all the different missing pieces are at. And that, again, has got us. That's unacceptable, especially for the people who are in our jails, which are the Black and brown communities.
Well, we have another call on. Let's try to get this one in before we actually take a break. Caller, we have caller on the line. Good morning.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to know, does the Office of the Clerk have any influence or sway in terms of streamlining the voter registration process, and is the office in a position to encourage more voter registration?
Well, the clerk's office basically is the office that takes care of all the records of the judicial folks that are, either accessing the jails, accessing the system. But I always say, wherever we are at, we always have to encourage voter registration. We have to encourage that component can be there if it's allowed in the building for voter registration. I will be the first one that will make sure that it's about voters, engaging our voters more into what's going on around them. The clerk's office might not be important to people out there that have not had to access that office, but for people who had to access that office for whatever the reason they might have had to, it's important that they leave that office with a good experience. What we've heard is not that. We've heard over and over, years and years of, like people have said, mismanagement and just the lack of leadership and professionalism in that office because of the lack of training. So voter registration, making sure that people understand the importance of this race. Probably the clerk's race are probably not one of the most important races, especially when we're in a year where we have a presidential election. It's important that people exercise their right to vote. You can't continue to criticize us if you're not going to engage
in the
and
process.
help us in the process to make it a better government, to make it a much more transparent. To me, it's about, sunshine and transparency in an office that has been so corrupt that people have just continued to bash over the years about the lack of leadership. And this is the opportunity for us right now to finally set in motion the new clerk's office in a direction that is positive, that it's welcoming, that it's open, and that people are actually seeing changes. But it's something that I cannot do alone. I have to really surround myself with people who are vested in the county, who are vested in the system that they access all the time, especially when you talk about the attorneys, when you talk about all the other individuals that are part, they have to be part of the change that we need in the clerk's office.
So what would be the, as we wrap this up before we go into a break, how would you want people to get in contact with you and engage in your campaign to actually this office as we wrap up at this point?
Well, Iris for Clerk, .com is my website that people can go there, take a look. There's all kind of information that we're putting in there. We want to make sure that we're very open and transparent on what our thoughts are for that office. But this is not about me. This is not about me. It's about all of us trying to transform this office. Get engaged in this race, because this race is an important race. It's in a race that really is the transformation, hopefully, of a brand new clerk's office that we can be proud of. And we cannot be sitting on the sidelines and saying, oh, that office is so bad. Oh, that office is so bad. Changes need to be done. The changes can happen now. And the changes can be positive and forthcoming if I know that I have that energy. I know that I have the experience. But more important, the commitment and the energy to make that office a well-functioning office that people can be proud of. And I welcome anyone to join me in this mission that I'm on, to make sure that we can really put our thoughts out there about what this office needs, but an office that everybody can be part of transforming.
Okay. Well, we'd like to thank you for actually coming out to our show. In fact, I want to welcome you to come back one more time before the election.
I will be happy to.
And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about election 2020. So, as we wrap this up at this point, we'll...
Hi, I'm Kathy Hayes, friend and supporter of CANTV. CANTV has been dedicated to educating the community and community action. March 17th is the primary general election. Please remember to get up and get out the vote. Vote your voice. March 17th.
Who fights for you? Civil rights attorney Bob Fioretti, that's who. Bob Fioretti has been fighting for you his entire career. Long before it was trendy, who fought for those that have been wrongly incarcerated? Who took on racial discrimination in the adoption system and won? Who fought and won for victims of drunk drivers, greedy insurance companies, polluters, and racism? Bob Fioretti, that's who. The son of immigrants, Bob Fioretti grew up in the Roseland Pullman neighborhood. His Italian father and Polish mother raised him to fight injustice wherever he found it. A graduate of Mendel High School, Fioretti was elected student body president at the University of Illinois. A member of the first ever law school class at Northern Illinois University, Bob Fioretti could have chosen any field of law. He chose civil rights to fight for those who have been ignored, bypassed, or steamrolled by society. No fight is too big for Bob Fioretti. He even fought cancer and lived to tell about it. Diagnosed with tonsil cancer in 2011, he lost more than 50 pounds, but never missed a city council meeting during his treatment. Cancer wasn't the first of Bob's opponents to pick the wrong fight. So, who fights for you? Civil rights attorney Bob Fioretti, that's who. Paid for by friends of Bob Fioretti.
Hello, welcome back to election 2020. We're talking about the candidates that's in this March election. Today we actually have with us Bob Fioretti, who's running for the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. This should be a very lively conversation, but it shouldn't be between me and just him, but you can actually call in and ask questions. The number for you to call in is 312-738-1845. That number is up on your screen at this time. It will be up throughout the show. So just give us a call and ask your questions. This is your chance to ask the candidate. Good morning. How are you doing?
It is a good morning. Thanks. Thanks for letting me be here.
All right. Well, first of all, let's just jump right into it. Could you tell us, because you're running, of course, for the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, what is that office?
Well, the office is a lot broader than what people think.
Of course.
Right away, we assume it deals with criminal justice or locking up the bad guys. And I mean, the state's attorney is the chief prosecutor for the county of Cook. We know that. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, when we look at what needs to be done in that office, there's a civil division that has almost 80 attorneys. There are appellate divisions. There are divisions that deal with our tax issues. When I say tax, property tax issues, deals with child support, domestic violence, human trafficking. So the office is a lot broader than somebody who gets murdered, property crime on the street, any type of crimes. It has a $150 million budget. It has 800, 700 plus attorneys in that office. It has about 1,000 civilians who are either from administrative staff to investigators. So it has a tremendous impact on the citizens of Cook County.
Okay, and tell me about your background and why are you qualified to go into that office at this time?
First of all, I have a long history of standing up and fighting for the people of this city and of this county. And I say that my background, I've been a practicing attorney. I did prosecute crimes and prosecute matters in the Corporation Counsel's office, but at the same time I did a lot of defense work. I was involved in labor negotiations, pension issues, and I was very fortunate to represent the mayors in litigation. So I've had a wide range of individual practice. At the same time, I have had probably in my private practice have handle everything from A to Z. And if you give me an alphabet letter, I'll tell you what kind of practice I did. Administrative law to admiralty law to appeals, to the same time all the way down to zoning. And probably everything in between. I've had a very broad-based practice in my private practice. At the same time, as you mentioned right before we went on the air, I was a former alderman. I stood up against corruption. I voted against bloated budgets 6 out of 8 times. I voted against red light cameras. I was the only one who stood up on all of the mass closings of our schools that were happening. I share the values of the people that are listening to this program and the people of Cook County. At the same time, they tried to defeat me. The Democratic corrupt machine tried to defeat me every time, and they spread a lot of misinformation about me, and at the same time that I ran, they doubled and tripled their resources to defeat me in each and every election. Millions of dollars they spent to defeat me, and in fact they did it in such a way that they moved the whole of the Second Ward, a historic black ward, up to the north side. I mean, people should have been outraged on what was happening.
Gerrymandered the map.
Yes, they did.
It was, I'm like, wow, that's kind of interesting.
And aldermen up there, the machine alderman, that's great. There's a lot of great territory. I'm not going to move my house where I've lived for 23 years to satisfy the whims of corrupt politicians.
Right.
And we're seeing what's happening now. We see the whole deal over the post office with Danny Solis and Ed Burke was all about I wasn't going to let anybody take advantage of what was happening there. That was just pure corruption at its best. That gerrymandered map was about corruption and lining the pockets of certain politicians. That's all it was. So I know what happens politically. And I have the experience. I've gone down to Springfield to lobby, and when I say lobby, I was not a paid lobbyist. I did it for the interests of the constituents of the city of Chicago and the county of Cook. I've gone to Washington, D.C. to see if we can get more money for our park systems under certain park elements, so we can bring money into this city for our parks. So I have the governmental experience, I have the political experience, I have the private experience. I was appointed Assistant Attorney General under 3 Attorney Generals. At the same time, I was appointed a Special Assistant Cook County State's Attorney. I was appointed a Special State's Attorney in Will County and one in DuPage County. I have the breadth of experience necessary to assume that. I've defended people. I've defended those that have been wrongfully convicted. I've helped those out, too, on cases. I'm looking at cases right now that are in Rock Island and downstate on whether or not there are ways that they were wrongfully convicted pursuant to the individual's needs. I get calls, I keep saying daily, but 3-4 times a month from people, from mothers, grandmothers, and those that are awaiting trial to look at their cases and help them out. So I do have the understanding of what we need, because when you're the state's attorney of Cook County and you file a criminal petition and it says the people of the state of Illinois versus whomever,
Right.
that people of the state represents not just the victim, not just the law enforcement, but also the defendant. And we need to make sure that that defendant has all the rights that are afforded under the Constitution, so they have a fair trial and they have the evidence that are necessary for them. And I am running because I believe this office, and I've been approached by a number of people to run for this office. And I have been on the offices that I've run for. People have approached me. And I asked them to get the petitions. They did, and that's why I'm here today. I should say, as you can tell, I'm a little bit dry. I'm going to grab a quick little bit of water.
I understand.
During my one reelection, I had a serious bout with cancer. I lost 60 pounds. I've put 50 back on. I'm 9 years cancer-free.
Wow, thanks. That's great.
I mentor a lot of people, both in my profession, but in the that have cancer. But it gave me a greater empathy for people that are hit with something beyond their control,
Right.
And the despair that they suffer from it. And you know, I see what I can do, and I help those people. But you asked, what are my other qualifications, and I better take a sip of water because I am dry. My salivary glands, just
No.
like
No.
one of the congressmen from the 1st District has the issues too, and it happens. So,
Oh, not a problem. But while you was doing that, I was wondering, what about, you have 4 other candidates, all of them that are attorneys as well. What makes you stand out?
Well, I believe Kim Fox, who's the current incumbent, really didn't have any background. She was put there by her
right.
boss, Tony Preckwinkle. The other candidate, Bill Conway, just it's amazing to listen to him on his commercials, and I'm glad, you know, part of the reason why I've been for campaign finance reform is so billionaires can't buy
those
elections.
buy a seat. Right.
And he's still a novice. And Donna Moore, who I've known, and we've had dinner together before, and her and her husband. But she has a lot of the gaming industry behind her,
Exactly.
and the marijuana industry. Nothing wrong with that, but don't be running for state's attorney because it influences your decisions.
Right.
I serve on at the Chicago Bar Association, 2 committees there, government lawyers and human trafficking, because I am concerned about Chicago being a center of human trafficking, a global center. At the Illinois State Bar, where I'm a member, and it's a 40,000 lawyer organization, I serve on the bench and bar. Which is, and in fact, in October, I was part of a faculty down at U of I in Champaign that gave a lessons in civility in our profession. I just wrote an article on that. Yesterday, I spent a few hours analyzing bills that are affecting the criminal justice system, and I listened to the dialogue that we had between judges and lawyers on what bills should be presented to create reform in our justice system. I also serve on government lawyers there. We do the same thing to impact legislation for the interests of all the people of all of the state of Illinois. And I serve on a special committee appointed by the president of the State Bar Association, which is Health and Wellness, which deals with the, and believe it or not, you know, sometimes we overlook some of the issues, but lawyers, we have anywhere from 1 out of 4 lawyers are addicted. And I'm on that committee because of what happens when somebody who gets hit with cancer and has huge outside medical bills. I had a Cadillac policy, but you know, I had $150,000 outside, and doctors said, go into bankruptcy. I said, I'm an elected official, number 1, and number 2, I'm a lawyer. It doesn't set the right standard for people.
Right, exactly.
We should be accountable and responsible. But I mentor students I mentor students now that want to enter into the profession. I serve on I mentor younger lawyers on a daily basis who are having issues and what to do. So I think I'm qualified to go in and become the state's attorney because I see the problems of what happens in our neighborhoods. Yesterday we had the Daily Herald interview, and the current state's attorney started talking about how she had met, and she said it at the Tribune, mothers of kids that were killed. I've given eulogies at those funerals, and I'm not saying it because I'm elected and I'm here before you. In fact, I'd rather be quiet about it. But they are grieving every day. These mothers and fathers who have lost their sons and daughters and to gun violence in this city.
Yeah, she mentioned that, I was looking at that. She had mentioned that particularly because of, she is trying to balance the issue of the Jussie Smollett issue of her receiving calls from individuals, and she just said, I receive calls from individuals all of the time. And she was saying not just high-profile people, but, common people, as I would put it. She didn't use those words. So what's your take on why the Smollett case, out of all of the thousands of cases that she actually has to deal with on a daily basis, is such a big deal? Yes, it was a problem, and yes, it's in the news, but that's part of the society in which we live in. So what's your take on that? Why keep bringing that one up and not talk about all of the other things?
Well, first of all, we all know that there's the investigation going on. People are being called before a grand jury. I hope Dan Webb comes to a swift conclusion because a lot of it has been made public before he even got appointed. But to receive a phone call early in the morning from a high-powered, very important individual, the best thing she should have done was, I'm sorry, but this is, we can't talk right now about this. And she should have said that. And as you said, she balances it off with a mother. Apparently, she met a mother a couple of weeks ago and wanted to, whose son, I think son or daughter was killed, and the mother had some kind of information and why the police weren't looking at it. Well, the question gets to be that Jussie Smollett, no matter which way we look at this, she received a phone call early in the morning on her cell.
Correct.
And as I asked her yesterday, she said, well, you have my cell number. I'm not sure if I still do from 4 or 5 years ago. But does everybody in the county of Cook have her phone number?
Of course.
To make that, to make a call on something that's happening. From a crime on the CTA to some smash and grab up in Northbrook at one of the retail places. Secondly, that influence, or I should say that influenced the direction. Secondly, she said she recused herself. And to me, recusal is, I'm out, and if you were working with me in my office, everybody has to be out.
Right.
It was too important. So don't, and then it was a colloquial sense of recusal. Well, she either lied to the public or she didn't lie and made a big misrepresentation. And third, Jussie Smollett was treated differently than anybody. Anybody. It was all of a sudden, nobody knew about the court appearance. If it wasn't for probably a reporter checking that that's Jussie Smollett going into the courtroom, and that they couldn't get in, they wanted to know why, everybody got the call.
Right.
So why was he treated differently? And it's unacceptable. And she talks about the hallmark of her office being transparency. Well, it sure as heck wasn't transparent that day.
Well, why don't we actually, we have a caller to call that has called in. Do you have a question for today?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay.
I am a victim of Jussie Smollett type action. I was serving as a substitute teacher in 2012 in the Chicago Public School. A parent and the assistant teacher made a blatantly false allegation against me. I was investigated by DCFS. I was cleared, and then I was fired. I fought it for 8 years, and I'm going to continue to fight it. He can give me some advice as to who I can go to, because the Office of the Inspector General refuses to return my phone calls.
Oh, wow. Okay, thanks for the call.
Well, I heard there was somewhat of an echo in here, too, and I was going to ask the crew in the back to make sure we can tone down the echo, but I am concerned with the amount of investigations that are going on in CPS. I think you may have seen in today's paper that the Inspector General of CPS is now under investigation. So I am concerned all the way on the, as you may know, I've stood up against sexual violence for quite a long time. I got an award in the city council from one of the groups, as an alderman, I shouldn't say in the city council, I got an award from one of the groups. But I hear what you say, and I'm very, very concerned on what goes on in our analysis to make sure that cases are judged the right way. And as I said, as I started off, the people of the state of Illinois versus whether or not you were indicted or charged, we have to be very careful to make sure that the rights of all citizens are respected under the Constitution, and so people have fair trials. During the summer, and I will tell you, I try not to go into courtrooms at this stage. A lot of people know me, whether it's on a jury or otherwise, so I put together teams of people instead to handle cases outside of or in Cook County. We had a client that faced several felony charges, but he was an Indian, and I know he was innocent. He should have been found not guilty, but and every time I would ask him, as I sat there with him, as I watched the team that we assembled, do you really want to have a jury sometimes? There are issues with our process, and I want to make sure that everybody has a fair trial.
Wanted to just, because of our time, I wanted to, something that you had said in one of your previous presentations about, that I was a little curious about. You had said that there was an eternal war going on between law enforcement office and the state's attorney office. What do you mean by that? Could you explain it?
Yes, I believe there is. There is a disrespect for our police out there, and it seems like every time we had, look, we have probably 200 police agencies in the county of Cook.
Wow, didn't know that many.
Yeah, I know. And see, right, when you start adding it up, we've got 130 plus suburbs. They have all their own police departments.
Of course.
They've got chiefs here, chiefs there, and when you start looking at it. And even the smallest of suburbs, they only have a few hundred people, have a police chief
right.
and a police force.
Right.
So they have to be properly trained, hired, supervised, disciplined. But there is a feeling out there, I shouldn't say feeling, it's a real approach, that the police are all bad. Well, the thousands of police officers that I see, that are out there, they're of all colors, all genders, all races, all religions, and they want to do a good job. The other night, I walked into a restaurant, and there were two police officers. One was injured on duty, and one was a retired sergeant. But they were police officers, and they started saying, "We don't see color when we're out there. We don't see gender when we're out there. We're there to make sure our citizens are safe." And the state's attorney's office has allowed certain statements that are highly prejudicial, morally offensive to the law enforcement community. And I did receive FOP's endorsement, and people know that I support law enforcement. But at the same time, how do we battle crime in our city or in even the suburbs? We do it by bringing strong support of law enforcement, good law enforcement, but we bring jobs, economic opportunity, and education to our communities. And I've said that when I first ran, because I was upset with how CPS was treating young black students and that they didn't make it to college. I always said not every kid should go to college, not everybody should own a home, but the pathway should be there.
It should be available, right.
That is why I serve, and for the last 10 years, I serve on a foundation. I'm the assistant treasurer, secretary. We give away, and I shouldn't say give away, we give about
Awards.
70 scholarships a year. And a lot of it is in our west and south sides, and every year I get to meet them at a symposium that we have, and you see what's different. And in '07, when I was first elected, I was giving a lot of graduation addresses to some of the good schools and those that are challenged, and I would look and see where the kids were going. And they weren't staying in this state. And I would ask the parents, whether it was on the west side, Bronzeville area, why are you sending your kids down to South Carolina or this school or Missouri or whatever? I don't want my kids to grow up in this city. There's no jobs and no economic opportunity and crime.
I would love to actually have you back on the show because it's just no way. I still wanted to actually talk about, you had mentioning about violent crimes and things of that sort and how the state's attorney office actually works with that. But due to our time limits today, I'm going to have to ask you, will you be willing?
I didn't realize it went so fast.
Would you be willing to come back before the election?
I will.
Okay,
I will.
Definitely.
We'll work it out.
Okay.
And like I said, I didn't think it went so fast.
Well, yes, it just went like that. And that's why, we try to give people as much time as we possibly can and schedule it as much as we can.
Yes.
But as we get to the end of this, how could people get in contact with you or help engage with your campaign for the state's attorney's office?
Well, we have a website, Bob for State's Attorney, and they can go in through there. I'm pretty accessible anytime, and we'll return phone calls, reach out to people, and I'm very honored on the support I have. I don't have the money. I had a high-end Democratic fundraiser person recently say to me, Bob, if you in my first year in office, I gave back over $100,000 to developers because I didn't want to be influenced. I never took money from developers. And they said, well, if you didn't take from developers, if you didn't take from certain industries, how did you raise money? And I said, the people gave me small contributions of 5 and 10 and 50, 100, whatever they can afford. And, I'm proud of that record.
Okay. Well, thank you for watching Stephen Patterson Presents Election 2020. We look forward to seeing you not just at the election booth, but we look forward to seeing you on TV as we discuss even more about Election 2020. It's very important that you reach out to not just your people in your house, but the people in your community so that they can actually come to election with you and not hear about what actually happens at the end. Well,
good.
It's been a
Thank
good
you.
show.
It was great.
Yeah.
It was great, but too short. Honestly,
Exactly.
I didn't
30
realize,
minutes.
that it went so fast.
Yeah.
Yes.